There's something unsettling about holding an artifact in your hands that shouldn't exist. Something carved with a precision your best modern tools can barely match, and something built with knowledge that supposedly hadn't been discovered yet. And yet, museums around the world display objects exactly like this. Objects that force uncomfortable questions nobody seems eager to answer. You've probably heard the standard explanations. Ancient people were clever. They had more time. They figured things out through trial and error. But here's the thing. The closer you look at certain discoveries, the less those comfortable answers hold up. Because some of these artifacts don't just suggest intelligence. They suggest something else entirely. Something that makes historians pause mid-sentence and change the subject. Today we're examining 7 ancient discoveries that continue to defy our understanding. Not theory. Documented finds that sit in research facilities and museum vaults right now, challenging everything we think we know about human history. Trust me, after this, you'll never look at the ancient world the same way again. The Antikythera mechanism was pulled from a Roman shipwreck off the coast of Greece in 1901. Divers exploring the wreckage brought up corroded bronze fragments that nobody paid much attention to at first. Just another piece of ancient debris. But when researchers began cleaning the incrustation away, they discovered something that made no sense at all. Inside the corroded mass was a complex system of interlocking gears. At least 30 bronze gear wheels, precisely cut and carefully arranged. The mechanism could calculate astronomical positions, predict eclipses, and track the cycles of the ancient Olympic Games. It was, by every definition, a computer. An analog computer built over 2,000 years ago. Here's the problem. According to conventional history, technology like this shouldn't appear for another 1,400 years. The precision required to cut these gears matches what you'd find in 18th century clockwork. Even modern engineers who've attempted to recreate the device have struggled with its complexity. Dr. Tony Freeth, who spent years studying the mechanism at University College London, called it more valuable than the Mona Lisa. But what troubles researchers most isn't the mechanism itself, it's what it implies. If ancient Greeks possessed the knowledge to build something this sophisticated, what else did they create that we haven't found? And perhaps more importantly, where did this knowledge go? Because after the Antikythera mechanism, nothing remotely similar appears in the archaeological record for over a millennium. The official explanation is that this was an anomaly, a one-off creation by an unknown genius. But that raises another question. You don't develop this level of precision in isolation. There should be prototypes, failed attempts, earlier versions showing the evolution of the technology. None have ever been found. So what if we're not looking at an anomaly at all? What if we're looking at the only survivor of a technological tradition that was deliberately erased or systematically lost? In 1938, German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig was sorting through artifacts of the Baghdad Museum when he noticed something peculiar. A clay jar roughly the size of a fist containing a copper cylinder and an iron rod. Nothing special at first glance. But when Koenig examined the arrangement more closely, he realized he was looking at something that shouldn't exist. The components were configured exactly like a simple electrical battery. The iron rod sat inside the copper cylinder without touching it, and the jar showed traces of an acidic substance. If you filled this vessel with vinegar or grape juice, it would generate a small electrical current. Modern reproductions have proven it works. The jar dated to around 250 before Christ. That's roughly 2,000 years before Alessandro Volta invented the first recognized battery in 1800. Mainstream archaeology has struggled with the Baghdad battery ever since. Some researchers insist it was just a storage vessel. Others suggest it held sacred scrolls. But here's what they can't explain. Why would you construct something with this exact configuration, if not to generate electricity? The copper cylinder serves no practical purpose for storage. The iron rod makes no sense for scroll preservation. When skeptics point out that ancient Mesopotamians had no use for electricity, supporters counter with an intriguing possibility. Gold electroplating. Several ancient artifacts from the region show evidence of gold coating so thin and uniform that fire gilding alone can't explain it. Electroplating. Wood. Electroplating. Wood. The Baghdad battery currently sits in storage, rarely discussed in academic circles. Requests by independent researchers to conduct comprehensive testing have been repeatedly declined. The official position remains that it's probably not a battery. But no one has offered a convincing alternative explanation for why someone would build this precise configuration 2,000 years before Volta. And if it is a battery, that opens questions nobody in conventional archaeology wants to address. The Piri Reis map was discovered in 1929 when scholars were cataloging documents at the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul. Drawn in 1513 by Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis, the map depicts the western coast of Africa, the eastern coast of South America, and the northern coast of Antarctica. Wait, Antarctica? In 1513? Here's where things get strange. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, more than 300 years after this map was drawn. Yet there it is, showing a coastline that would have been covered by ice for thousands of years. Not the current ice-covered coast. The actual land beneath the ice. The topography that modern sonar only confirmed in the 20th century. Piri Reis noted on the map itself that he compiled it from older source maps, some dating back to the time of Alexander the Great. He wasn't claiming to have discovered this coastline himself. He was copying information from ancient sources that no longer exist. The U.S. Air Force studied the Piri Reis map in 1960. Lieutenant Colonel Harold Z. Ohlmeyer wrote that the geographical detail shown in the lower portion of the map matches seismic data from the sub-ice topography. In other words, whoever drew the original source maps had access to Antarctica before it was covered in ice. That would place the original surveys at least 6,000 years ago, possibly much longer. Mainstream historians dismiss the Antarctica connection as coincidence or misinterpretation. They argue the southern landmass is actually South America, drawn incorrectly. But that explanation has its own problems. Why would Piri Reis, a skilled navigator who accurately depicted other coastlines, suddenly forget how to draw South America? Why does the supposed South America curve east in a way that matches no known geography, except the Antarctic coast? The map remains on display in Istanbul, but academic discussion about its implications has grown increasingly quiet over the decades. If you've ever wondered whether ancient civilizations possess knowledge that we've lost, the Piri Reis map suggests the answer might be yes. And whatever sources Piri Reis used, they're gone now. Destroyed, hidden, or simply lost to time. In 1966, quarry workers in Romania were digging near the banks of the Mureș River when they found something embedded in sand deposits roughly 35 feet below the surface. 3 objects emerged. 2 were mastodon bones, dating back approximately 10,000 years. The third was a metal wedge that immediately caused confusion. The wedge was made of aluminum, pure aluminum alloy. And here's the problem with that. Aluminum doesn't occur naturally in metallic form. It requires electrical separation from bauxite ore, a process that wasn't developed until 1825. Even then, aluminum remained extremely rare and expensive until the late 1800s. Yet this aluminum wedge was found in geological deposits that formed thousands of years ago, alongside the bones of an animal that went extinct around 10,000 before Christ. Initial analysis at the Institute for Metallurgical Research in Bucharest confirmed the composition. 89% aluminum, with traces of copper, silicon, zinc, and other elements. The alloy was remarkably similar to modern aircraft-grade aluminum. The wedge also showed signs of mechanical tool marks and deliberate shaping. Explanations have ranged from the reasonable to the desperate. Some suggest it was a piece of modern excavation equipment that somehow contaminated the dig site. But the excavation team documented finding the wedge embedded in the same undisturbed layer as the mastodon bones. Others proposed it might be a fragment from a crashed aircraft, but no aircraft has ever used this specific aluminum alloy composition. The Wedge of Aoud, as it's now called, spent years in storage before eventually being transferred to a museum in Cluj-Napoca. Requests for additional testing have been denied multiple times. The official explanation is that it's probably modern contamination. But that doesn't explain the geological context, the tool marks, or why a piece of modern equipment would end up 35 feet below ground in undisturbed sediment. And if it's not modern contamination, then what is it? Because someone, at some point in the distant past, apparently knew how to extract and work aluminum on. And that's a question nobody seems interested in pursuing. The Great Pyramid of Giza has fascinated researchers for centuries. But in 2017, a team of physicists from several universities made a discovery that added another layer of mystery to an already inexplicable structure. Using muon tomography, a technique that tracks cosmic ray particles as they pass through solid matter, they detected a massive hidden void deep inside the pyramid's. The void stretches at least 100 feet long, roughly the same size as the Grand Gallery. It sits above the Grand Gallery, in a section of the pyramid that was previously thought to be solid stone. After 4,500 years, we're still discovering major chambers that nobody knew existed. But here's what makes this discovery particularly troubling. The Egyptian Antiquities Ministry immediately downplayed the findings. Dr. Zahi Hawass, the former minister who still holds considerable influence, dismissed the research as flawed. Further exploration has been blocked. Why would you block exploration of a discovery this significant? What could possibly be inside that void that would justify refusing to investigate? The Great Pyramid already contains enough anomalies to fill books. The precision of its construction exceeds what modern builders can easily achieve. The massive granite blocks in the King's Chamber weigh up to 80 tons each, transported from quarries 500 miles away. The alignment to true north is accurate to within 3/60th of a single degree. The mathematical ratios embedded in its dimensions encode pi and phi to remarkable precision. And now, we know there's a massive hidden chamber that authorities refuse to explore. Dr. Hawass has stated repeatedly that the void is probably just a construction gap, not a deliberate chamber, but muon tomography doesn't lead. The data clearly shows a defined space, not random gaps between stones. Something is there, something significant enough that the team called it the discovery of the century. Yet here we are, years later, and no further investigation has been permitted. The void remains unexplored. Whatever is inside, whatever knowledge or artifacts might be waiting in the darkness, stays hidden. And the people with the power to authorize exploration seem determined to keep it that way. What if there's something inside that void that would force us to rewrite history? And what if that's exactly why we're not allowed to look? In 1912, a book dealer named Wilfrid Voynich purchased a collection of manuscripts from a Jesuit college in Italy. Among them was a small codex that would become one of the most studied and least understood documents in history. The Voynich manuscript has defied every attempt at translation for over a century. The manuscript contains approximately 240 pages of text written in an unknown alphabet. No linguist has successfully decoded it. The symbols don't match any known writing system, ancient or modern. Statistical analysis shows the text has structure consistent with natural language, not random gibberish. Someone wrote this in a real language. We just have no idea what language that is. But the text isn't even the strangest part. The illustrations are what truly disturb researchers. The manuscript contains detailed drawings of plants that don't exist, botanical illustrations showing species that no botanist has ever identified. Some appear to be chimeras, combinations of features from multiple plants that couldn't naturally occur together. Others show root systems and cellular structures that weren't understood by science until centuries later. There are also astronomical diagrams showing star patterns and celestial bodies, naked women bathing in interconnected pools of green liquid, and what appear to be biological diagrams of processes that remain unidentified. Some researchers have suggested the biological illustrations might depict embryonic development or cellular reproduction, knowledge that wouldn't be formally described until the invention of the microscope. Carbon dating places the manuscript's creation between 1404 and 1438, but that only tells us when the vellum was made, not when the content was conceived. Some theorists suggest the Voynich manuscript is a copy of much older source material, similar to how medieval scribes preserved ancient texts by copying them onto new materials. The manuscript currently resides at Yale University's Beinecke Library. Countless codebreakers, including teams from the NSA and British intelligence, have tried to crack it. All have failed. Even modern AI systems trained on historical linguistics have produced no results. What kind of knowledge was so important that someone encoded it in an unbreakable cipher? What did they know that required this level of protection? And why has every attempt at translation failed so completely? The Voynich manuscript sits in its climate-controlled case, waiting. Whatever secrets it contains, they've remained hidden for 600 years, and they might stay hidden forever. Our final discovery takes us to India, where a single iron pillar has stood exposed to the elements for over 1600 years without rusting. The iron pillar of Delhi weighs approximately 6 tons, stands 24 feet tall, and was forged during the reign of Chandragupta II around 402 after Christ. Here's why this matters. Iron rusts. It's one of the most basic principles of metallurgy. Expose iron to moisture and oxygen, and oxidation inevitably occurs. Yet this pillar, standing outdoors in one of the most humid climates on Earth, shows only superficial surface corrosion. The core metal remains pristine. When metallurgists analyzed the pillar in the 1960s, they discovered something remarkable. The iron contains an unusually high phosphorus content, combined with a near absence of sulfur and manganese. This specific composition creates a thin protective layer called mesowite that prevents rust from penetrating the metal. But here's the thing. Creating this phosphorus-rich iron requires extremely precise control over the smelting process. Modern metallurgists didn't understand this rust prevention technique until the 20th century, yet someone in 5th century India knew exactly how to achieve it. The pillar also presents manufacturing challenges. To forge a single 6-ton iron column requires temperatures and techniques that supposedly weren't available until the Industrial Revolution. The pillar shows no seams or joins. It was cast or forged as a single piece. Even today, creating a similar column would require advanced industrial equipment. Some researchers have suggested the pillar was created using ancient techniques that were later lost, possibly involving multiple small forges working in sequence. But no one has successfully replicated the process using only technologies available in 5th century India. The iron pillar stands in the Qutub complex in Delhi, where it's been since at least the 4th century. Millions of tourists pass by it every year, most unaware that they're looking at a metallurgical impossibility. A piece of iron that has done what iron isn't supposed to do. Survived. And if ancient Indian metallurgists possessed knowledge this advanced, what else did they know? What other techniques existed that we've either lost or never discovered? 7 discoveries. 7 questions that remain unanswered. From gears that shouldn't exist to metals that shouldn't survive. From maps that shouldn't be accurate to manuscripts that can't be read. The ancient world keeps revealing evidence that our understanding of history might be fundamentally incomplete. These aren't fringe theories. These are documented artifacts sitting in museums and research facilities around the world. Objects that teams of scientists have studied and struggled to explain. Evidence that forces us to consider an uncomfortable possibility. Maybe our ancestors knew things we don't. Maybe there were entire traditions of knowledge that have been lost, suppressed, or simply forgotten over millennia. The mainstream explanation is always that these are anomalies, exceptions, one-off creations by isolated geniuses who left no legacy. But how many anomalies do you need before they stop being anomalies and start being evidence of something larger? If you've made it this far, thank you. Leave a like if any of these discoveries made you question what you thought you knew. Let me know in the comments which artifact puzzles you most and which mysteries we should investigate next. Because somewhere out there, in a museum basement or an unexplored ruin, there's another discovery waiting, another object that doesn't fit, another question that nobody wants to answer. And the more we find, the harder those questions become to ignore.